This is the autobiography of a famous doctor, Howard Jones, and I'm going to read a short extract from the book, which was published in 2015 by Jamestown Bookworks. This reading is from my prologue to Howard Jones's autobiography. I titled it From Sun to Shining Sea. Since pioneer days, very few doctors and scientists have left a legacy large enough to be remembered for long, or one that endures beyond their lifetime. For most people who make a great discovery, their sun suddenly breaks out of obscurity to shine brightly for a while before it is eclipsed again by clouds. There are not many men or women whose sun glows constantly from a series of discoveries through a long working life. The Joneses were those kinds of doctors, and their story reads like a history of 20th century reproductive medicine. When Howard was still working into his 105th year, it seemed there would always be a Jones shining in the sky. He was still interested in scientific riddles, social concerns, and family matters. Why do eggs age? Why don't more insurance companies cover infertility? How were his children's jobs doing and his granddaughter's soccer league? He had frustrations with growing immobility and the complications of diabetes he hid, perhaps along with other conditions only shared with his personal physician, but which must be expected at a great age. He never whined, except to say that perhaps it is easier to pass from life in the way his wife had, rather than decay with a fully preserved mind to the end. Have you noticed how towards the end of life people are often drawn towards water? Some settle in retirement communities overlooking a river or lake. Others downsize to a home in a seaside town. Perhaps it is the peaceful flow that pulls them to the waterside, like time itself, or the infinitude of the sea and pounding of surf against round pebbles on the beach. Sometimes it is the happy memories of vacations around water that is so fascinating. The people along the sand all turn and look one way. They turn their back on the land. They look at the sea all day. From a poem by Robert Frost. The Joneses kept their membership of the Norfolk Yacht and Country Club long after their sailing days were over. When I joined the Jones Institute, they often invited me to join them at the club for casual dining in the deck. We would meet on the upper floor with Mason and Sabine Andrews, an admirable gynecologist and his wife, a founder of Eastern Virginia Medical School and former city mayor. We chose Thursday evenings because it was quieter and we could take a window seat to look down on the marina and out towards the bay. Our table was spread with a white cotton cloth and neatly arranged cutlery and napkins. A waiter soon arrived to pour ice water into our glasses and take our orders. Maryland crab cakes, chicken, and salad were popular choices, and Howard always chose soft-shell crab soup for Georgianna's starter. Then the conversation would start up about almost anything. We'd talk about town politics, the hospital expansion, medical care, and even my stem cell project. While we talked, Georgianna sat silently watching us and smiling to show she was engaged. These four were old friends from Johns Hopkins days, but they never made a younger buck like me feel out of place and did much to help me settle in Norfolk. They were lively spirits and enlightened company who, as much as they enjoyed looking back on past achievements, looked forward to new goals They had not stopped working as improvers and encouragers. After the meal, we'd rearrange our chairs in an arc in front of the full-length windows to enjoy the scene. Below us, hundreds of white boats of all shapes and sizes were drawn up in tight rows along the slips at the end of day. The rigging of yachts slapped against their masts, and sea rods on motor launches leaned forward like the antennae of giant aquatic bugs, gently nodding in the breeze. A fisherman lugged a heavy bucket of fish from his boat over a gangplank with its water sloshing over his gumboots. He waved at a friend on a late boat chugging into an adjacent berth. It was often like that. The conversation would fall quiet as we'd study activity in the dock below. But as the light faded, we'd raise our eyes to the skyline. Georgeanna would gaze very intently into the distance. Perhaps she hoped to see the sail of a yawl coming into the harbour. Then perhaps she could climb on board and sail off once more to the Chesapeake Bay of deep memory. Our meal was timed to finish with the sun setting over the shining waters of the Lafayette River until it dropped behind the silhouettes of dockyard cranes at the container terminal. Those evenings always seemed miraculously clear, with barely a cloud scudding across the sky. If you ever watched a sunset closely on such an evening, you will know how slowly it traces an arc to earth. It starts as a fiery yellow orb, which was high in the heavens all day, but makes its descent almost imperceptibly until you notice some heat has gone out of it and it is turning orange before becoming blood red. For a moment it looks like it will rest on the edge of the earth and scorch it. But then, and rather suddenly, it is swallowed up, and the horizon where earth meets sky turns a royal purple. When the show was over, we'd rise and take the elevator to the ground floor. There was nothing more to say after the spectacle, and we stepped outside in silence, Howard leading Georgiana with her arm curled around his. Walking into the darkening parking lot, we looked for their car with the 2 docks license plate. The first evening stars twinkled overhead.